English language. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Alan Fisher. Hi there.
Okay, yeah. Do I need the microphone? Can you hear me? Yeah, I've got a very, very loud voice.
Well, use it.
El profesor Reichman llegó un poco tarde, así es que a continuación hablará de algo muy interesante el profesor Alan Fisher, el origen del idioma inglés. Por favor, denle la bienvenida.
Hi everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm originally from London, but now I've been in Mexico for half my life. I'm now about 40 years old, so we can talk about 20 years, okay? Eugenia asked me to talk about the history. Can you hear me without the microphone? Or do I hear it? Yeah? Okay.
Tu voz es muy potente, pero
Yeah.
la cabina necesitamos mejores.
Yeah. Eugenia asked me to talk about the history of the English language, and my first reaction was immediately to say, no, no. One of my problems was where I was going to begin with this, and yeah. Where? Like that? Yeah? Is that okay? So, as I was reading a book about Western civilization, for no real reason, I started to begin the talk with this. As we can see, the Western civilization is rooted in the past of Greece, Rome, and Europe. We define civilization as a developed form of human culture based on city life, written language, law, advanced arts, and sciences. Note, spoken language is not included in this particular definition. Human beings were around for millions of years before they became civilized. Probably 2 million years. They estimate the age of the Earth to be about 4 billion years old. So this figure of 4 billion, I mean, we can't really understand 4 billion years. We think in terms of 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. So if we consider the 4 billion years as 24 hours, human beings appeared after 23 hours and 58 minutes. So human beings, according to this scale, have been on the Earth for 2 minutes, of which the period we were civilized, and that's relative if you think we are still civilized, is less than half a second. So, yeah? So, the English language appeared in a fraction of a second. Yeah, we're talking about maybe 1,500 years, but is a fraction of time. For those that are not familiar with the British Isles, here's a map. We have England is the shaded part, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland that make up the UK. I leave it there just for a few seconds so you can identify the major cities: London, Oxford, Nottingham, Birmingham, Manchester, so you know that the fans of Manchester United know where the city is. Okay? Yeah, especially for Anna at the back there. Okay. So the history of English is a complex and dynamic history. It is often, albeit very convenient, we as humans have to put things in categories. So we divided the English language into 4 periods: Old English, Middle English, Early Modern English, and Late Modern English. Genetically, English is classified as a Low Western Germanic language of the Indo-European family of languages. At this moment in time, nearly 2 billion people around the globe understand the language. So there are probably 7 billion people on the planet, and 2 billion, understand it. As you probably know, it's the language of aviation, science, computing, international trade and diplomacy. It holds a crucial place in the cultural, political and economic affairs in the countries all around the world. And from its early beginnings as a series of Germanic dialects, English has been remarkable in both its colonializing power and its ability to adopt and amass vocabulary from everywhere. We have robbed vocabulary from almost all languages, and yet it was nearly wiped out in its early years. Okay, next one, please. Okay, well, here we have a history of the English language, a diagram of English history. At the bottom you can see Old English, Middle English and Modern English. And Old English begins about the 4th century. The CE is Common Era. It used to be called AD and are dominated from Latin, but this is, I don't know why it's considered more politically correct to say CE rather than AD. And BCE was before Christ, but now they say before the Common Era. I have no idea why it was politically incorrect to use these terms. As you see, we have the main influences here: the Angles, Saxons, Jutes, Danes, and Frisians or Frisians are the main core of the English language that lead to these varieties: American, Canadian, Australian, British, etc. You have names of major people in the history of the language: the Venerable Bede, Chaucer, Shakespeare. And you also have the appearance of the Vikings, but had almost no impact, not an important impact on the English language, as the Celts or Celts had very little impact on the language as well. I'll leave that there so you can have a look at it for a minute or so, or less. No? Okay, the period of Old English, we go from 500 to 1100 AD. It's nearly impossible to identify the birth of a language, to put an exact date, but in the case of English, it's safe to say that it did not exist before the West Germanic tribes settled in Britain. During the 5th and 6th centuries AD, West Germanic tribes from Jutland and southern Denmark, also known as Norseland, invaded the British Isles. And England was invaded by various times by many people, and these tribes, which included the Angles, Saxons and Jutes, spoke a Germanic language, and this language is now called Old English, a language which is similar to modern Frisian or Frisian. The language is spoken still in Holland and parts of Germany. Out of these tribes, 4 major dialects of Old English emerge: Northumbrian in the north of England, Mercian in the Midlands, West Saxon in the south and west, and Kentish in the southeast. These tribes, along with the English language, may well have been wiped out altogether when England was invaded by the Vikings, if not for the Wessex king who was called Alfred the Great. After defeating the Vikings, who threatened both the English way of life and its language, Alfred the Great encouraged English literacy throughout the kingdom. So that would be Old English from 500 to 11 AD. Next one, please. Here we call, this has two pronunciations. We can call them the Celts or the Celts. Now, before the Germanic tribes arrived, the Celts were the original inhabitants of Britain. This would be before Christ, until the Roman invasion. Okay, so when the Germanic tribes invaded England, they pushed the Celt-speaking inhabitants out of England into what is now Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, and Ireland. The Celtic language survives today in the Gaelic languages, and some scholars speculate that the Celtic tongue might or might not have influenced the grammatical development of English. But the effect of this particular language is minimal on the history of English. Yeah, the next one. Okay, this is Celtic Europe, around 400 years before Christ. As you see, you have northern and central Europe, the Iberian Peninsula, and the Britannic Islands, or Great Britain, around 500 years BC, before Christ. Next one. Okay, this is just a picture for your interest of the Celtic burial. You can see the way that people are dressed. Yeah, that's just for interest. Put the next one. This is a Celtic warrior's garment. This is a replica, it's not an original. You have the helmet, you have this kind of tartan material that the Scottish are very proud of, and the Scottish form their clans with this particular material.